All right, so welcome to another episode of Seent It. We don't get to do these very often. So my name is Dalan Kirkwood. I'm the host of this particular show, and I got my nice little cohort here, Carlos Macias.
Thank you.
Say hi to everybody.
Thank
All
you for
right, there
having
you
me
go.
on your show, Dalen. I know usually I'm like, this is your thing. But you know me, man. I'm like trying to take over. Like, Dalen, this is the outline. This is what we should do. What are we
That's
talking?
exactly what happened.
What are we talking about this week, Dalen? What are we doing?
I'm not even mad about it though. So,
Yeah.
hey, structure never hurts, but
Yeah.
generally we just like to talk about whatever movies, TV shows, or anime, whatever actually comes up at the time that we decided to watch. And this time we decided that we were going to watch Twisted Metal. If you didn't know that the series came out, it's out. All 10 glorious episodes are out on Peacock right now. If you don't have Peacock, well, get Peacock, watch some episodes. But Carlos, I know I enjoyed the series for what it was, but I know and for it had I believe Anthony Mackie that he was in it.
Mm.
Stephanie Beatrice, I can't even say her name. Beatrice, is it Beatrice or
Beatrice, I
Beatrice?
guess, if you want to give it that
Beatrice,
accent.
Beatrice.
Beatrice, it's up to you. You know?
Will Arnett and Thomas Hayden Church. But for me, I feel like this show had the perfect amount of cheese in
Okay.
it. I mean, for Twisted Metal itself, it was already its own kind of post-apocalyptic
Mm-hmm.
cheesy. But what do
Yeah.
you think about the show in this case?
Yeah, I think it was hitting that line, man. It was kind of like borderline. It was borderline. Cause look, to me, the gold standard of perfect amount of cheese, Cobra Kai. Especially the first couple scenes. They obviously wasn't high budget. It was a low budget kind of TV show, but the cheese was there. It was the perfect amount of cheese. Twisted Metal, they had like washed out scenes. You could tell the full budget wasn't fully there. There was some kind of nasty looking graphics in it. But I can understand for being the first season, right? How it's kind of like, okay, well, look, let's not spend too much. We have like the example of what's the Dungeons and Dragons movie? I don't know if you
Yeah.
heard about it, but it flopped. They said there could be a potential of a sequel for that with the lower budget. In this case, I think sometimes they start out with the lower budget, and hopefully for season 2, which they peek into it. We'll talk about that in spoilers, right? But for me, borderline, man. There was moments where I was like, it's just a little too cheesy. It's a little trying too much, and we'll get into that into spoilers, right? I
Hey,
believe.
all right, look. Twisted Metal itself has always been an over the top video game to begin with. All right, you have a man named Axel where he's just attached to two big ass wheels.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you got a race car that speeds on that just it just spins. It spins on its fender.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but in this particular case, I will say that the first half of the show, I was perfectly fine with the graphics that they had and the level of cheesiness that they threw into it on purpose. The second half of the series, I started seeing.
You can see it kind of from the beginning, man. Those washed out backgrounds, like, damn, you guys couldn't even smoothen it out a little bit more, right? But yeah.
Oh no! At the end, they straight up lost budget. I'm gonna say this right now. I'm not gonna say exactly what part.
Hey, we'll get into
but
spoilers, but I think they actually increased the budget at the end, like the finale.
No, not
but
with that whole scene with the one race car. I'll come back to that.
We'll
though.
save it for that for spoilers, right? We'll get into it. But, yeah.
But storyline wise, this is essentially a prequel to what the Twisted Metal games were. So having anybody with a named character was an awesome feat because they built up to it. They
Yeah.
built up to creating what Twisted Metal was. They didn't want to just do what Tekken did and try and throw you into it's a tournament. No, they didn't do
Well,
that.
Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, right? All these movies are like, you want to see cool shit. You want to see cool shit. This is definitely one of those things where it exceeds expectations for sure. It's not a perfect show. It's not a perfect show. It's not my favorite adaptation of a video game. Nothing like that. But it definitely exceeds any and all expectations you would ever have for. You explained it correctly with the man with the axle wheels or whatever. His name is Axel. So they went away from it to give you to come back to it, right? To be able to like, okay, they give you an explanation of like, okay, this is what happened in the world and this, and even it seems, you know, we can get into more specifics and spoilers in a bit here, but it seems like they were like, okay, that kind of makes sense. The Stone character, the main character, you know, they have Sweet Tooth. They're like, okay, that kind of makes sense. It's kind of, and it's kind of funny in a lot of ways. In a lot of spots, I'm like, okay, that got a chuckle for me. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, well, they started switching up some of the cars for the characters themselves, which, on one hand, for being a fan of Twisted Metal, when you're first seeing it, you're like, oh, that's upsetting. I wanted Officer Stone to have his trademark police officer mobile, his whatever unit or whatever you want to call it. But they gave him the SUV, which actually just appeared in later game.
Yeah,
and that particular vehicle was called the Outlaw, which in itself was a good way to portray him in the show. So in itself, it worked out the way that they portrayed the character. Eventually, this is a small spoiler, is that the main character Anthony Mackie eventually gets that vehicle and calls it roadkill. So it's just awesome to have these vehicles.
Good job on the like major spoiler, Dalan. You could have you could have waited, man. We're like 3 minutes away, Dalan. We're 4 minutes away.
3 minutes
man.
away.
You could have waited, man. But look,
hey man, I can do it when I'm ready. Look, it's my show.
Look,
remember
that's
that.
true. But look, this is why I like and I hate doing a show with you like this, because you know the lore. I don't know anything about this fucking, like, that's not the car until the third game or until the first game, so I appreciate that. So it's not exactly at 100% to the source material, because it's 10 episodes, right? And to be honest, what the hell was the story in Twisted Metal in the first place? So I think they do their best of loosely being on the same source material, but you know, they have people you expect, a Sweet Tooth, and like you said, you know, some other cars. I guess if you want to mention in spoilers, we'll get into it. But
hey, this whole series is world building, and I think they do it in a great way to be able to continue Twisted Metal beyond 10 episodes. Obviously, it stops at 10 episodes in this case, but everybody does a great job. I love the way that Anthony Mackie played his role. I was a little thrown off by Stephanie Beatrix and some of the jumping back and forth of the way she's supposed to portray her character. And then there's Will Arnett. I did not know he was going to voice Sweet Tooth at all. Okay. That was new to me.
Not his body, who is we should have put him down on the nose, but it's a Samoa something. Samoa Joe, I hope I'm right, or something. I hope
Samoa Joe.
Or
who are you trying to talk about?
I think it's the Sweet Tooth body, because the Sweet Tooth. You're gonna tell me that's Will Arnett's body, Dalan?
The man who played Sweet Tooth, like the physical embodiment of him. I can look up his name, but
it's kind of I don't know. That's kind of where that like borderline, if it's the right amount of cheese, kind of comes into play, because some of it is like, I think these guys are decent actors. You know, Stephanie was in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And then you have Anthony Mackie, where like some of the acting's a little off, but I don't know if that's just more editing or direction, or they only did one take and they're like, let's go, we gotta continue.
No, man, they were not taking themselves entirely seriously for this show. They were like, this whole game is wacky, we are going to make the show the right level of wacky to tell the story and keep people interested, but we still got to be a little stupid, because we gotta
that's fine. That's fine in
what Twisted Metal was.
In the wacky parts, I get that. They're being wacky. But there are moments where they're like, they want you to make you feel something, right? And in those, I'm like, I don't know if they necessarily pull it off. But overall, I think it's good.
Joe Cianoa, I can't pronounce his name very well. But that was the body of Sweet Tooth versus Will Arnett's voice. And putting them together was the best choice that those directors could come up with, because Sweet Tooth was hands down one of the best characters in the whole series. But I understand that you would love to get into some spoilers.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Take a few
all
10 episodes.
So,
all 10.
Spoiler warning.
We'll give them 15 seconds. We'll give them whatever the podcast player gives them. It's like 15-second skip or whatever. You know, that's it. I think it's been 15, 20 seconds.
Hey, but before we officially get into the spoilers, I just say, watch the series. It's a good watch. It is a fun, good time. If you just want a fun series, I say watch this series. And even though it had its ups and downs, Carlos, do you appreciate this series? Would you
Yeah, I
recommend it?
think so. Yeah, and we'll give it a full rating. I hope you got your We Got Comms full rating for it at the end here, Dalan, because I have it ready. But yeah, I think it's recommended. It's just a wacky show. It's very digestible. 10 episodes, but they're like 30 minutes long, right? And I don't. That episode 9, it was like 20 minutes. I see what you guys did. It was a short one. But you know, it's easily digestible. We watched it. You know, it just came out. 3 days ago, 4 days ago, and we watched the whole 10 episodes, so it's easy enough to watch. Because some shows are a little rough, take a little while to get through, and these were
1 hour for 10 episodes.
Yeah,
like,
they were digestible enough, I guess, right? But yeah, we'll get into spoilers. What's the biggest thing that you were like kind of like, this is just wild, this is out of control?
Well, I was okay. I'm not gonna say it's a spoiler. I was also
We're
thrown
in
off
full
by
spoilers.
that.
We're in full spoilers, so spoil away.
Yes, we are in full spoilers. The fact that they decided to make Outlaw the main bad guy, and Officer Stone being the main bad guy was a crazy thing to me because obviously in Twisted Metal you don't know who the real bad guy is except for the one name that shows up during the end of the series, Calypso. Calypso was the one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's kind of the hint, right, that you get is that's the character, and you only see kind of a disembodied, kind of voice, right? It's just like, here it is.
You don't even see it, Carlos. Right? You hear the disembodied voice.
Yeah.
And oh my God, that world. You talk about let's take some packages from one place to the next. I'm going to transport some rice-a-roni. I need you to bring me back my ice cream before it melts.
See, we didn't even do the groundwork, man. Then we missed it, right? At the beginning of the show, this is what it's about. It's about a milkman. That's what they call him, right? He's basically a delivery driver, right? And he gets into all kinds of troubles and wackiness, meets this other female kind of love interest. They have a love scene in a ball pit, which is very interesting, very wacky.
That was probably your favorite part.
I don't know if it's my favorite part, but I will say it kind of plays into what my favorite part is the soundtrack is kind of nice. It's super wacky. I did not realize I was gonna listen to Hanson's Bop. Is that the song that it's like? I was like, okay, reasonable. And then at some point, Evanescence, My Immortal. I was like, okay, that's very reasonable. So there's a lot of wacky stuff, man. I think one of the big things for me, and where you could tell like the budget's not that strong, I would say, is that there's really only like a couple of car battles. Right, which is good because you're sprinkling out, you're building out the world, right? You don't go into tournament mode like you do in Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter. I think you mentioned another movie where they're like, let's just go to the cool shit. It's like, yeah, but you didn't build anything up. So at least we have some excitement for season 2, right? But we really get one, we get like half of one, right? Where they're at the amusement park. And then towards the end, of course, you get the arena.
You get the full thing. That's when all the characters really came together, and that's when you see Twister for the first time. Yeah. And that was the one where I was like, the CG fell off. It fell off hard because she was running away from a missile, and the graphics were nasty. The entire minute and a half that was happening.
but I mean, they had been falling off. Is I guess what I'm trying to tell you. The graphics had been falling off since the very first couple minutes.
I didn't feel the graphics falling off. They had some practical effects in the episode where they had to go deal with the what did they call them? The holy men. They had to go deal with the holy men. They had practical effects there. Things were exploding.
That was probably the better
trucks on roads, and it reminded me of. What's the name of that one train movie? It was that one long train movie. Where
I know what you're talking about. Snowpiercer, right?
Snowpiercer. Yeah. The trucks on the road.
But it wasn't believable though. It wasn't that believable though, right? It was obviously they were inside of a studio because there's no like movement of the truck. I feel like I gotta go back to watch Snowpiercer, but I would think there'd be like a little
there was some sway.
Yeah, there was a little sway to it.
But in regards to the trucks, now that you actually bring it up again, there was a point where we were watching these trucks, and they're on the road and keep moving all the time. So How many trucks are there? How do you find these trucks? Because apparently Anthony Mackie could do it. He went and actually found the trucks on 3 different occasions. And then at the very end, the whole convoy just disappeared with the exception of 1 truck. Where did they go? Why did they break off? They don't give good explanations for some of
that's and look, that's part of like the suspension of disbelief. First of all, they don't have the budget to really have someone probably that is like fully like, you know, because some of these movies have like a continuity director or, you know, somebody that's keeping track of that shit. Obviously they're not, right? They kind of threw all this stuff together, but with the budget that they had, and I think they did a good enough job. I do appreciate, before I forget, the Nope inspired scene of Billy and Two Scoops. All you needed was like the shoe kind of pointing upwards. If you saw Nope, right? I hope I'm not spoiling nothing.
Yes, I've seen it.
All you needed was the shoe like poking up. That's all you needed with the Billy and Two Scoops, which turns out to be the Sweet Tooth. It turns out to be Sweet Tooth when he grows up, right? But I was like, this is okay. No, let's just rip off Nope. Let's just rip off Nope and the little studio scenes. But I did appreciate that, right? Because imitation is what is it called? The sweetest form of flattery, or the sincerest form of flattery. Right,
it works out, but they did the entire show. They did the movie justice with that particular part of it, and you could really see where the psychoticness comes from. And then it actually brought context to later on, but it kind of took away from the mystery of what Sweet Tooth was. Honestly,
I mean, you got to give him something, man. You got to give us some reason why he's a wild animal. Why is he doing the randomness, right? And
in the games, he was just an undead guy that didn't like to die. So Calypso kept bringing him back.
I appreciated the bag. That was some of the more hilarious moments when he's like, "Okay, Harold, you're in charge," and he leaves him with the gun. He leaves a brown paper bag with the gun next to it. But I do like I forget what the episode was, right? But he comes back, he's like, "Why did you kill everybody?"
That was like episode 7 or something like that, when they were taking down the prisons, because the Outlaw has a bunch of outposts throughout the U.S.
So I don't know.
Those maps.
Yeah,
I'm gonna bring it up. The map that they have, it was a map from like Caro's or something like that.
Okay, reasonable.
Oh man, it cracked me up just seeing this. Hey man, it was just the most bootleg map you've ever seen in your life. It had like a couple of pictures on it and a little icon like, oh, I know what this is. How do you know what that is?
Yeah. I look, overall, I think I like the show. It has its hits and misses, right? But I think I like it overall. Can we do kind of what's coming up next for season 2, Dalan? Kind of predictions, what we hope for. I know it got set up for a tournament, right? The next thing is a tournament.
Straight up did. The Calypso tournament.
The Neve Campbell's character, she basically said, I'm setting you up in a tournament. He kind of hooked the main character into that. I do like how she threw it in there. It was nice how she threw it in there. It's like, yeah, and I want to see you guys turn it into Twisted Metal. I was like, oh, okay. It didn't even seem forced. It was smooth how she threw it. It was like, you guys are going to turn each other into Twisted Metal. I'm like, okay. And then, of course, Calypso, right? Calypso is kind of teased, and he's going to show up, I'm sure, in the tournament. Axel with the tires. You see the picture coming up, so you get a sense of that.
Oh, yeah, they put in a lot of pictures of all these characters. Mr. Grimm was actually featured on it for half a second, even though he's supposed to be an undead man with a skull on fire all the time. But I have a question for you, Carlos. Did you actually play the Twisted Metal games?
I mean, I did, sort of, kind of. I mean, I didn't have a PlayStation 1. I didn't have one. So I played them a little bit. That's why maybe it's one of those things where if you played them, I don't know, maybe you did. Did you play them a lot, Dalan?
I did. I played the first 3 a whole lot. So the one thing I will say, aside from Left Down, if anybody gets that, is when it comes to the series versus the video game, even though this is a prequel, the one thing that they kept going solid the entire time was the need for a wish. Every place had a wish, which is why they even had the milkman thing show up. Being that Anthony Mackie, the milkman, transporting goods from one place to the next because people were wishing for stuff. The original game, all the games as a matter of fact, was about Calypso saying, you're in this tournament and the winner gets just any wish, just a free wish. I'm not talking about, I have this item I could get for you. I'm talking about a real wish. Whatever that wish is, he could make it happen.
Okay. So that's part of
but it's also I don't want to say bedazzled, bedeviled. I can't remember the name of that movie. But yeah, it's the fact that the devil will give you the wish, and it turns out to be a twisted wish. That's what Twisted Metal has always been.
Okay, so we got
So
things to
that's
look
what I'm
forward
expecting for the next season.
We,
I'm expecting that somebody's going to win that tournament, somebody's going to get a wish, and that wish is going to go fully awry.
I hope the wish, and you know what, it's gonna come down to how successful it is as far as whatever metrics NBC is using, or Peacock, right? Because they want to see it kind of blow up, right? But I'm hoping they get a better budget, man. I hope they get a better budget, and we'll see better graphics involved, and they're setting it up for that. I think this was the correct way to do it, right? With not this whole like, let's try to make really cheap looking fights happen all the time. They kind of created the story, they built the world for it, right? And it's just a matter of, we'll see it pay off next season, I hope, right? Like that it was successful enough and they can really put the money into it. Let's give it a rating, Dalan. Let's give it a rating. Let's go with yours, because I feel like I will not be affected by your score. I don't want you to be affected.
No, I don't think you'll be affected by my score, and I wouldn't be affected by your score. The fact is that I've been a fan of Twisted Metal a little bit more than you have. I mean, let's say they made a Tony Hawk Pro Skater TV show. You'd probably be more into that than I would. But the fact is that based on game versus series, which is where all the comparison comes from, I could give this a good 7.5 out of 8.
Okay.
Not out of 8, 7.5, 8, right in there in that range.
Okay. Yeah, I think for me, I'm kind of lining up kind of close to where you're at, Dalan. To be honest, it's a 7.5 for me too, man. It goes beyond like the expectations, man. I don't know about you, but me, I've had 0% expectations. In the last week, we've seen kind of some of the reviews come out. I think they might be too positive, because it's definitely one of those things where it's like, I like it, it's cheesy enough, but it kind of is borderline cheesy. It's not the perfect amount of cheese as like a Cobra Kai or something like that, but they did the best they could with the obvious budget limitations that they had. And they set up the world.
You keep saying Cobra Kai, but I think this is more on par with Burn Notice and their cheese.
Oh, okay. Oh, but all right. I don't know. Burn Notice is up there, man. It's yeah. I don't know. It's Cobra Kai. Probably okay. You got me. I think perfect amount of cheese. Burn Notice.
You got me.
Burn Notice. Below that is Cobra Kai, and then this one, man. I think this one's a little lower level.
Hey, that's high praise coming from Carlos Macias out there in the wilds. Again, host Dalan Kirkwood. And anything you want to say to the people before we go, good sir?
Good hosting, Dalan. I need to get like I feel like, you're in charge, and I try to take charge, so I apologize for that. But thank you. That's it, man. Thank
you caught me on the fact that I skipped the whole line, so that was a very important part.
We're trying out here. We gotta make each other better. I hope you guys enjoyed it, right? Carlos Macias. I don't think you said the name, but that's fine.
I did very much. Out in the wilds. Thing. I said it, Carlos. I'm on it. Don't worry. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.
Next week, maybe, hopefully, salient points. We've been like, what is it called? Not doing our obligations. Is that the phrase or whatever? But
not doing your obligations. That's fine.
Yeah. There you go. All right, maybe we'll see what happens next week. But yeah, go and check out Twisted Metal.